Welcome to the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast. Lieutenant Colonel Ken Crigliano, your co-host.
Thank you, Warrior Gamers Foundation, for having me on your show. I'm really honored to be here. My name is Dr. Lakeisha Dreher, Thornton Dreher, and I am originally from the south side of Chicago, Illinois. I'm a disabled Iraq war veteran, and when I ran across your show, at the event that you guys had, I was extremely impressed because I am also a war veteran and I love gaming, and I actually did my dissertation on game-based learning. So when I ran across this event, knowing that you guys help in all of those categories, I was very impressed with your work. And so that's why I wanted to work with you all, because just being there for veterans who's gone through the type of devastation that I can relate to, I think that that's extremely needed right now. So I thank you. And also with the children who's lost parents to the veterans who's been in wars. I know people who who's gone through that, and also people who's going through PTSD, and how socializing with others can just basically bring them out of that space and to help them. And so your organization is just phenomenal, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, thank you for that. And she's being quite humble, as she's known for, and we do want to honor her service at the ultimate sacrifices that she's given for the country and our way of life. I know that resonates with everyone right now. And I think there are zero people who will argue with you on that the time is now to push forward with solutions for mental health. And we think here at Warrior Gamer Foundation that gaming is a necessary ingredient for the solutions that we hope to get over the next 5 to 10 years for mental health, stress, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. And so we know that you are very familiar and sensitive to all of those. And would you just let the audience know kind of how you are participating with Warrior Gamer, just briefly if you want, and how you chose to get involved and engage with us?
Yes, as I mentioned before, I ran across an event that you guys held at a university, Shenandoah, I believe.
Shenandoah, right?
Yes, and I noticed that you guys were working with, it seems like all of the branches, the Navy, the Marines, Air Force, and the Navy, and also with youth. And I was mesmerized by that. And so I started to read and try to contact people, try to actually contact you guys to see how I can become a part of that. And I was able to get in touch with you, and I basically, my family and I guess you could say, we have a foundation that we offer underprivileged, underserved communities, where it's called the WDK Foundation, where we offer funding. And I noticed that you guys were giving first prize winner, funds to first prize winner, but not the second and third. So I just thought, okay, well, I would like to get involved with that, and just to reward all of the gamers because it's not an easy task. And so I contacted Josh, I believe it was, and we went ahead and moved forward with that. And since then, I told him I would like to become more involved in the organization, and mentorship is extremely important to me because it's one of the things that saved my life. I guess you could say, from it pulled me out of the hopelessness that I experienced as a child, and also the devastation and hopelessness and depression that I experienced as an adult, just by having advisors and mentors and leadership helping out. And so I told him that I would like to become part of the organization to possibly start a mentorship program for you all.
Outstanding. Good. And that's you went exactly where I was hoping you'd go. And we really do appreciate it. And our Shenandoah event, which was our Veterans Day event, was very well attended, very well received. We had a multitude of executives like yourself reach out to us. And it really was almost our breaking out moment. We do understand that 23 calendar year 23 is going to be our breakout, and we're very excited. And that event also, the Gold Star Gamers, SHI and Verizon, Microsoft, Meta, these companies donated a bunch of stuff to those kids that we would think that they would have had, but they didn't. They got a VR kit, they got a PlayStation. Bilal, did they get what else did they get? Do you happen to remember?
An Xbox.
That's right.
They got an Xbox. They got all three systems: Xbox, Oculus,
That's
PlayStation.
right.
Their eyes just lit up. It was fantastic to see. Jason Hill from Verizon made that happen.
That's right. And we did have him as a guest, and I will put that down below if you're on YouTube in the show notes, as well as the doctor's bio that she's referencing, which is very impressive. And so and you heard that April snuck in, by the way. So as I told our guest, just wait, she's gonna sneak in here and just energize the conversation. So all right. So what I'm very interested in is everyone has their own unique experience, and everyone goes through their own unique stressors, and they deal with it in a different way. And you mentioned mentorship, and that's one of our key components here in Warrior Gamer. And I know as an athlete, and I've mentioned this a bunch of times, that I go nowhere without coaches, trainers, and mentors. I have at least 10 of them at any given point in time. And so what I want to know is, people have gone through similar experiences that you have, tens of thousands of them, but they don't have the bio and the resume that you do now after. And so I would like for you to just sort of maybe open a couple pages of your life and explain to us on how you went from those experiences to coming out the other end a stronger, more powerful, more empathetic, and more driven human. Very interested in that.
Yes. Well, I've been around so many different types of diverse people till I feel like I can relate to the multitudes. I've lived in abandoned homes. I've been in the military. I've lived in areas where they have $1 million homes. I've been around so many different cultures and things like that. And so I feel like I can talk to the masses, and not only talk to them, but to relate to them, to empathize with them, because it seems like I've been there. And when I say there, I mean everywhere. As a child, my dad got into a situation where he ended up being put in jail right before I was born. And then my mom, she tried to raise my sister and I, and had a very difficult time doing that. It seems like we were just moving from place to place to place, and ended up in situations, and like I mentioned, abandoned homes, just trying to survive. And a lot of people look at this gaming as a distraction, as a negative, but I don't, because of how it helped me. When I was going through all of that, it made me feel hopeless, like I was stuck, and like we were never going to get out of that situation. So I would just, and back in those days, we only needed about $1 to go and play. Just the arcade, to go in the arcades and play the games and things like that. And so not only, I would take $1 and I would spend 4 to 5 hours in the game room, just socializing, making friends, and just being distracted. And I didn't understand that just by watching them, I was literally teaching myself. I was learning. I was becoming motivated. I was getting myself at that young age, which was probably about 10, between 10 and 12 years old, I was getting myself out of that funk, which a lot of people, they kind of just sit in it. So that's what, when I talk to youth, that's what I encourage them to do, to not just sit in your depression and your hopelessness, but to find something that you love, regardless of what it is. Most of the time now, because they are what I call digital natives, they go for gaming or something in the digital world. So I tell them, find something that you love and try to pull yourself out of it. And then also, as in my early childhood, I was diagnosed with insomnia and ADHD. So not only was I all over the place mentally, but I couldn't sleep at night. And so I'm just up, and then of course they're coming to wake me up for school, and I'm dead tired at that point because I will have a difficult time sleeping. So a lot of times I wouldn't be able to focus in school, and traditional teaching and learning that they offered in school, because I was already tired and exhausted most of the time. I guess I can go back a little bit. My mom did take me to the doctor because she knew something was wrong when I was bouncing off the walls all the time. And they wanted to medicate me, but she basically told them no. She didn't want me to be medicated. And so what they said was, give her coffee. It'll zoom her up and then drop her down. So that was back in the 70s. So anyhow, I learned just by playing the games, because that's what she did. Instead of medicating me, she gave me books. She gave me Rubik's Cubes. She gave me video games. And what I noticed is that that would still stimulate it. It would stimulate my mind. And so it would take me up, but instead of just dropping me down, it would balance me. It would help me to focus. And so that was one of the things. It would also help me to, because I was focused, I wouldn't have to be told things over and over again. You know, it helped me to retain things. And when I would have homework and I just couldn't grasp what they was teaching me in school, she would either like put it in a puzzle, or she was the first one who taught me how to do these things. That's why I do it now. But she would put it in a puzzle. She would sing a song. We would create a rap song, you know, just things like that. And it would help me to retain the information. However, when I got in school and they tried to teach me the way that they taught, I couldn't quite catch on. And it didn't make it any better that my sister was a straight A student, so she was total opposite of me. And so it made me feel dumb. When I played the games, I would literally, you guys know about Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, Millipede, Centipede, and all that. Back in those days, you could turn the games over, which means you got to $100,000 points. And it started back to zero. Mm-hmm. And so I would be able to learn without even knowing that I'm learning as I'm playing. I would be able to learn these games, turn them over, and retain the information enough to apply for tournaments and win. and it was mind-boggling to me, because here I am, a CD student, but I'm able to grasp concepts and algorithms and code and master them. So that inspired me to know that I wasn't done. It wasn't me. It was the education system, because they were only teaching in one way. And so that ended up inspiring me to want to learn more. And that's what I did. And that's how I ended up with a PhD because even it helped me to know that there was something wrong, and it gave me the confidence to go up to the teachers and to ask them, can you show me this in a different way? Is there a different format that you can show me in a way to where I can grasp these math equations? And a lot of them, some of them, they would just roll their eyes, but the majority of them would say okay, and they would teach me a different way, and I would catch on just like that. And so that's what gaming did for me. It showed me that it wasn't me. I wasn't dumb. Then I joined the military right out of high school. My grades hadn't been good enough, and so I wasn't able to, get scholarships and things like that to college. And so I decided to go into the military to serve my country, to obtain a better life, to be the first in my family to earn a degree. And I breezed through basic training and AIT, but ended up being sent straight to Desert Shield, Desert Storm at 19 years old. And I ended up experiencing some pretty devastating things, such as being chased by burn victims, that's missing limbs. I ended up being in multiple accidents, seeing some of my buddies being ran over by tanks, tracks, things like that, having panic attacks in my gas mask because we would stay in them for hours. And I also experienced one of my dear friends commit suicide over there because he received a letter from his wife, a Dear John letter. And at 19 years old, your brain can only process so much. It threw me into a really bad state of PTSD, major depression disorder. And when I came home, I didn't quite understand how to handle it. And so I basically tried to eat it away, ended up gaining 300 pounds and just kind of being swallowed by it.
So how long were you at Desert Storm?
I was there for 5 months.
Okay, so you're 5 months, and so you had a gaming background for many years prior to going into the military. You experienced these atrocities, and how long from Desert Storm to when you separated and went back in the civilian life?
Let's see, that was 91. I went back into the civilian life right before 1993.
Okay, so it was a pretty short period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you came back and you identified these troubles to your military physician equivalent, primary care. Okay.
Absolutely.
What type of assistance did that afford you, if any?
Back in the 90s, that was prior to, what do they call it? Is it called the Iraq syndrome or the Gulf War syndrome?
Gulf War syndrome, yep.
That was prior to them diagnosing any of that. And so when I was experiencing PTSD symptoms, they basically just said, just give it a little time, you'll be fine, you're okay.
Yeah.
And so I spent quite a few years in a dark place. And what I did was I just remembered what typically takes me out of that dark space that I had been in before, which was gaming. So I bought a computer. Not a computer, it was more like a PC back then. Began to play PC games. And spent about, and just board games. It was basically gaming that brought me out. But then after the gaming brought me out, I knew I needed to get out. So I went to the nearest park, the local parks, and I joined team sports at that time. And that began to bring me out a little bit more. And at that point, that's when and I'm talking a matter of years. This was like 5 to 10 years of struggle.
Before you went outside to do these team sports, physical sports?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were gaming the whole time before then?
Yes.
What were you playing?
I was playing Miss Pac-Man.
Right.
The games that I knew. And also there was a game called, oh goodness, it was where a lady, she was a private investigator. And it was like a mysterious game where she would look for different. Carmen.
Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Yes. I played that game so many times, and it stimulated my mind. It always kept my mind thinking, wondering. And I pulled my husband in too, because he's also an Iraq veteran as well, Iraq war veteran as well. And so him and we would just sit there and we would just get lost into games like that. And it until I was able to get proper help, like by seeking therapy help, mental therapy help. Those are the things that helped me to get out of those dark places.
How did you combine your gaming with the institutionalized provided therapy sessions? And did they talk about it, or did you talk about it to them at all?
How did I do what?
Did you combine your gaming with the therapy sessions that you were afforded? And did they recommend, did they talk about it? And did you talk about it as well? Was there an integration?
Right. No, they didn't integrate it. However, they did tell me to keep doing it because they knew that it worked for me. So they encouraged it. And yes, they encourage, and what they also encouraged, like art therapy, whole health therapy, mindfulness, things like that as well, which I didn't even know I was creative until I began to do that. And that's what really started me to want to write books. Because once I started writing, it was like, didn't want to stop. And I had so much to write. So, yeah.
This is good. This is good. This is exactly where I want to go now too, is when you become superhuman. So this is great. Your gaming, your love for gaming, and your childhood experience with your mom making things fun. I have that kind of mom too. She makes everything fun. And no matter what stupid things I did, she always received it in some kind of fun way. And so it really helped. And so you brought that in to your life, which is really great, the gaming and then the therapy modalities. And now you going, okay, and most people know that writing is a self-exploration process, self-discovery. Most people write on topics that they want to learn about. And so now we're seeing the next ingredient of your development, of your blossoming. And so if you can just kind of hit the wave tops of your writing experience and how that was therapeutic as well, I'm sure that will be of interest to a lot of folks.
Yeah. While I was in the desert and all of that I mentioned to you was going on, I started writing back then a journal. And so that was the first thing I actually noticed that began healing within me, that gave me hope, that helped me to overcome the devastation that I was experiencing. And so I wrote the journal for 5 months straight, starting from the day that I got there to the last day I was there. And so I think is going to be my first book. I just have to kind of rewrite it, edit it, things like that. But and then I also would like to write about just my life, what I experienced in life. And I was able to basically coach my daughter in sports through full scholarship in college. So I wanted to help parents out who has athletic kids on how to hear from or how to allow recruiters to hear you. And so it's a lot. Ministry books, devotional books. I'm just looking forward to writing quite a few different books.
So this is interesting because I know you weren't toting around a laptop in Desert Storm, so you were probably had a notebook and a piece of paper and a pencil, right? Writing on paper.
Yeah.
So Bilal, we hit on this previously, where there is like this magic of, you know, writing down using the act of looking, thinking, and writing, right? And Bilal's in medical school. And so when he graduates, being part of this podcast, being exposed to you folks, I mean, he's going to be superhuman as well. Bilal, can you just kind of hit on that and how therapeutic that is and why a lot of the gurus online say journal, write, doesn't matter what's there, just do it.
I think because when you have your thoughts all up in your brain and you don't properly process them, there doesn't seem to be any intention or direction behind those thoughts. And what you're doing when you're writing is you're taking an amalgamation of ideas and putting them into something tangible. So it's like, I think of it this way: when I'm learning, and I've noticed this for myself, I know we talked about learning, which I do want to talk about in a bit. So in med school, we have libraries worth of information. We can't possibly write it all. Now, one thing I could do is attempt to write everything. I can write all the bullet points, but I will never finish. I will be tired and I'll be left with a mess that means nothing. Or I can take notes, kind of like journaling. So what I'll do is I'll take these bullet points and arrange them in a way that makes sense to me, make sense of it in my head, and then write it down. And that's how I remember. I was actually doing this yesterday because we're now studying neurology, and I'm relearning all of neuroanatomy, and I had to draw out so many different pathways, and it was all clicking within one day because I was writing, because I was taking these complex thoughts. And I see journaling as a very similar way of evoking such a sense of organization that I believe is therapeutic.
Yeah, if you look geopolitically at civilizations that started to write, it's a geometric increase in their sophistication. Societies that don't have any written language never evolved. And so it's just, there's some kind of magic there. And I do think that gaming kind of taps into that magic because of the hand-eye coordination. And I don't remember which episode it was, but we talked at length on that Shenandoah event on just the unbelievable superhuman abilities that I noticed, hand-eye coordination and rapid thought. So I'm interested in hearing, you know, my first question was like, a lot of people went through Desert Storm. My brother did, right? And a lot of people came out the other end not driven for a PhD. You know, they were driven to drink and to violence, and some escaped into the mountains. And so at what point did you say, I cannot be a victim, I have to ascend? And can you just talk to us about what your internal conversations were, so that people who were there or went through it can just gain an extra perspective?
Right. I would say the one time that I found myself in a very dark place was when my buddy committed suicide, because he was basically holding me and he was crying. And when he when he passed away, when he took himself away, it took me to an extremely dark place. And while you're there in war, in that atmosphere, in that environment, they basically have that suck it up and drive on. That suck it up and drive on mentality. And they expect you to have that. Well, if I wouldn't have had that journal to take a step back and to write those things out, I think I would have had a very difficult time. So it was not only writing, like Bilal said, getting it out, but it was also, I had to call on a higher power at that point, because it got to the place where I was mute for a minute, where I couldn't think, I couldn't see, I couldn't feel, I couldn't do anything. And the only thing that brought me out was me just doing what I did back in the day in my childhood, and that was gaming and praying. And so that's one of the things that helped me. I began to pray. And I'm a fighter. I felt like I did not leave everything I had been through in my childhood just to come here and become nothing, or to fail, or to just drown into that hopelessness again. So I just began to tell myself, you're going to be okay. You can do this. I began to think about my dreams, my goals, the things that I wanted to be when I grew up from a child. I said, I can still do this. I just have to fight for it, and that's when I began to reach out and begin to talk. I had my times where I did like what you were saying, where I just needed to be on my own. I needed to get away, and I still do. However, I always tell people, reach out to others, especially if you become suicidal, homicidal, because I'm sure you guys know about that. That's what I did. I basically told I thought about my goals and my dreams. And most of it, the thing that kept me going and moving forward is because most of it, my goals and dreams aren't about me. They're about others. So what I want to do is take my hopelessness and my devastation, the things that I've been through, my experiences, and to help others that's going through the same thing. So when I began to not think about myself, but think about others, that's what brought me out of it. The love for others, love that I have for others, to help them.
Yeah, so we talked about this, and I know, April, you hit on this on previous episodes as well, which is just the necessity to surround yourself with people who can uplift you. And I will say that I don't think I've met anyone who say, yeah, the solution to moving on is solitary confinement of oneself, right? And so, and like serve yourself. And so what's really interesting is that Carmen Sandiego game, if I remember right, she's solving crimes against victims, and she's traveling around the world helping people and like doing investigations, and a lot of cerebral stuff in that game. I loved it. I'm so glad you reminded me about it. And so now here you are, 20, 30 years later, like doing that. You're now like the Carmen Sandiego, and it's really interesting to see the influence of gaming and Pac-Man, like Mrs. Pac-Man. Like you were like, I'm a fighter, right? I mean, I'm gonna eat these ghosts, right? And so you're like this living, entity of the games that you played when you were younger, which is really cool to see. And so like, if you talk to people who are in that situation, number one, you need to get people who can uplift you. Number two, you got to get out, right? And then play something and expose yourself to things that will help kind of like indoctrinate you and maybe program you, right? So April, if you can you talk a little bit about that, like influence on these games and the mental aspect and how it can mold people's behaviors?
Yeah.
Oh, you went on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
hoping you can't hear the music. I'm in our gaming center. But I applaud your resilience. I applaud the power that you pulled from inside to bring yourself to this point, and your decision to stay here, stick it out, and share what you learned and what you know with other people. And I think that's what all of us are doing here. You know, every week we are here in order to be an example for others, particularly around the suicide front. I've had 2 students commit suicide, and it is hard when a 19-year-old commits suicide, no matter where you're at and what your circumstance. But gaming offers such a relief, such a broad community, such confidence building. It's a fantastic way to bring multicultural people together, people of different creeds, of different ages, of different cultures, find they have common things to talk about when they're talking about gaming, just like with regular sports. You know,
Mhm.
the rightist wing person can talk to the leftist wing person if they have the same football team in common. So I think that ability to bond and that ability to bring people together is something that, we can't give enough credit to gaming for. And the fact that you used it as a sort of like a way to self-soothe in the time of struggle. I'm hoping more people realize that working through emotional states in game is practice for working through emotional states out of the game, so that these are transferable skills, so that if you're in CSGO and you're feeling like, everybody's ganging up on me and I just don't know how to do it, you're going to work out how to deal with it much easier in CSGO. And then when you find that same situation mirrored in your real life, you're going to remember, wait, I felt really attacked there and I dealt with it. So I think there's such value to, it's almost like Ken always says, how do we make superhumans? Gaming gives people emotional reoccurring events that they are real. People say gaming's not real, but the emotion of gaming is very, very real. And I think that emotional practice, that emotional stability, that ability to overcome loss and to really, put your all into learning and performing and achieving excellence, all of that is transferable to your real life and your real world. And I think what I would ask you is, what advice would you give to people today who are in the space that you were in? What advice would you give them to sort of take the next most logical step out of it, if they're, not ready to reach out to a professional for help, but what can they do on their own from your perspective?
As I mentioned earlier, I would basically just tell them to find something. And what I've actually told some youth that I've had a chance to speak with is, think about what you love, your desires, what makes you happy, and just focus on that. And right now they have Google, they have the internet, they have all of that. They could, don't be alone. Like, try to find others. And that's why I feel like gaming is wonderful, because of the social aspect of it. You don't have to be alone when you're feeling bad, because you're playing games with others most of the time. But I would basically just tell them to just pull whatever you can from the inside and try to uplift yourself. And if you see that you can't do that, reach out to someone else to do it for you, because your life is important and you're stronger than you think you are. That's what I typically encourage youth that I come across.
It's really interesting, because I can use the word solitary confinement. The first thing I could think of was that experiment. That white room experiment? They put you in a sensory deprivation chamber and you have nobody to talk to. That's one component of the issue. And if you look at the criminal justice system, solitary confinement is one of the worst punishments you can receive. It's a punishment. It's not a means to save. So it's really important that kind of understand. I draw that parallel so that we can really understand that even though solitary confinement, the lack of stimuli might feel peaceful at first, that peace eventually causes you to wear away. We have the same word, it's called atrophy, you know, right? When you don't use a muscle, it atrophies. You know, I don't see why your own consciousness or your own willpower, it can be the same way. Your willpower can atrophy if you just take away the stimulus, take away any drive to bring yourself out of the situation. It actually reminded me, and I can't share my screen, but there is this trap card in the game Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm drawing this parallel just because I think it helps us remember. It's called the Rope of Life. So when you activate this Rope of Life, it says when a monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard. So you have monsters that get destroyed to the graveyard, you can't use them anymore. Discard your entire hand, then target one of those monsters, special summon it, and if you do, it gains 800 attack points. That's a lot. So why am I bringing this card up? Is because you are going to have to make some sacrifices. You have to discard your hand. But the monster that comes back even stronger. And that could mean the difference between you winning or losing. That's your last shot, but you got to take that chance. You got to hold on to that rope of life. And it's really awesome that you are the living embodiment of that. So very awesome hearing your story.
Thank you. I also just encourage them to just hold on, because nothing's ever stays the same. Everything passes. And if you could just hold on enough to know that things will always get better. Even if they go and turn around like it did with me, get worse again, it's still going to turn around and get better again. And we were all put on this earth for a reason. And so until we find that reason, we just have to keep going. That was another thing that kept me going, was my purpose, just trying to find my purpose in life. And even being diagnosed with the things that I've been diagnosed with and still being diagnosed with, I still feel like I have a purpose in life. I was put on this earth to help others who's gone through what I've gone through. And so that's what keeps me going. And that's what I would encourage them to do if they fall into a dark place, and not listen to that voice in the back of their head, basically telling them to either quit, or they're not good enough, or just whatever the case may be, or they no longer need to be here. Just know that you're here for a reason.
So if I'm an executive, right, or I am, let's say, a leader of a VSO, and I hear all of this, and I'm going, this gaming space is very intriguing, but I just, number one, I don't know how to enter the market, and I don't know what to do when I'm there, and I don't understand how to explain the value to spending money in this area. Particularly, like if, say, we're, Department of Defense, Department of Veterans Affairs, Purple Heart Foundation, AMVETS, American Legion, these iconic organizations that have set the bar. What's happening is in the gaming space, they're being created. And I think the numbers, there's 11,000 now veteran organizations registered in the 501c3 IRS database. And so I would love for you to talk to that executive, that leader, and kind of help them understand this space and the power that it brings, maybe today, and then also 3 to 5 years, because these folks, when we bring them into WarriorGMR, I want 5 to 10 year commitment, so we can stabilize and move. And so if you could kind of talk to maybe that audience, I think it'd be pretty powerful.
Right. I would basically say the VA has come a long way. And when I say that, I mean, like I mentioned, when I contacted them, they were able to offer me the mental health that I needed, and whole health that I needed, as far as the art therapy and creative writing therapy. But the one thing that wasn't there was the gaming. And to me, gaming is a lot like the military. It has that strategy component in it, where you basically get together and you can just focus and try to capture things and win items and just overcome obstacles, and so it's basically applicable to life. Those other things, you're basically going out and you're tapping into your creative side. But to me, gaming is applicable to life. It helps you to accomplish different areas, and I'm trying to explain it the best way I can as far as the strategic side of it. When it comes to, let's say you get into a bind and you need to get out of it. Well, in gaming, you don't have to do it alone. Like what you were saying, Ken, you can ask another person to come in and help you. You guys could collaborate together to try to figure out certain things. And so if you have a person who's sitting there and they're either stuck in the war and they can't seem to get out of that space, you don't really have to take them out of that space. You can place them into that space, and it can inspire them it can inspire and encourage to bring them out of into the real world instead of into the war world. And so it's basically a lateral form is what I'm trying to say. Instead of trying to pull them out of something, you can meet them where they are. And that's what gaming does for us. That's what it does for me. And so if they can look at it in that aspect, I think it would help a lot of those veterans with PTSD, MDD, and all of the other acronyms that they have out there, all of the other illnesses that they're dealing with, that they don't know how to come out of. Gaming, I feel like, could help to improve their diseases, their illnesses, and to help them.
So I know 100% when I had my brain injury, I actually demanded my insurance company buy me a Xbox Connect. So, because I was like, I need to connect my body with my brain again. And it was instrumental. And I've talked about this before, but it was instrumental in my ability to recover. They would have, like, kick the ball and add math. And it was just incredible. And I'm so indebted. The main reason why I'm in this space was my experience, just like you and like all of us. And so when we talk to these folks, we have just begun putting our toe in this water of what simulation, gaming, the reward mechanism, all of this stuff. And the most powerful therapy that humans do for themselves is disassociation. Oprah Winfrey talks about it all the time, especially in her book. And it is a form of dissociation where you can kind of maybe let's just kind of step away from what's going on out here, and so that I can just kind of sit and focus. And people do that with books, but this is an interactive way to do it. And if your company and your organization is not in the space, you need to enter it so that you can also learn and evolve while the industry is learning and evolving as well. I don't think anyone would argue with that, right? I think that's.
And they're already basically holding contests and tournaments in other areas, so I don't understand why they wouldn't do it for gaming as well. Especially the progress you guys made at Shenandoah.
Yeah. We are hoping to get up in the tens of thousands of simultaneous viewers, hopefully get up into the hundreds of thousands of views in a short period of time. I see this being bigger than the Super Bowl, these gaming events, multicasting and commenting and just having multiple hosts across the world. I was on a show called Ultimate Beastmaster. We had like all these hosts speaking all different languages at the same time. And I totally see that happening in the gaming space. And I think it's just going to be very, very, very exciting. And I want my finger right on the pulse of this. And so, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host after this question of what is the ultimate driver for you that you just would not let go? Like, this is the thing that drives me no matter what type of catastrophic failure something occurs. This thing I'm holding on to that I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm very interested in knowing that.
When I finally realized that I wasn't dumb, I wanted to learn as much as I could because that's the way my brain worked. I mean, my brain, it can see the sky, and it wanted to know not only why it was blue, but what are those white things in it and where do they come from? And so my brain was always constantly going. My goal was to learn as much as I possibly can as far as up to the point of a PhD. And so when things happen to me, that's what actually came back to me. You still have goals, you still have dreams, you want to do this. And I made a mistake and I told my mom. So anytime she saw me in a dark space, she would be like, so are we still going to get that PhD that you were talking about as a child? And it would just light something up in me, whereas I would go, okay, I need to come out of this and I need to move forward. You know, I could do this. I want to be proud of myself. And so it was that thing. And it was a thing that I actually, in the back of my mind, didn't even think I could accomplish myself. Because you have to remember, I was a CD student. So anytime that I ended up in a course or a class and I just did not understand what the teacher was talking about, could not grasp the concepts, I would take the work home myself. And I would research and study and look in the back of the book. You know how you have the answer in the back of the book and then try to figure it out myself. I just fought to be the best that I possibly could. Just so when I saw others, children, young adults, women, I could say to them, if little old me could do it, who has been through this, that, who was diagnosed with this, that, who now physically is diagnosed with this and that, if I could do it, so can you. All you have to do is just never give up. Just keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets.
That's right. And I think
and also the veterans as well.
Absolutely. And I think, the slogan here for this episode is nothing is insurmountable. Mm-hmm. There's always someone who's had it worse than you, who's gotten out of the back end better. And so nothing is insurmountable and there's nothing wrong with you, right? You're not stupid. You're not dumb. You might be uneducated, but that can be fixed. There's only things that have happened to you, right? And so I love that's your message, and I really appreciate your time. And I'll turn it over to my two amazing co-hosts. And April, if you want to go first, that would be great.
Absolutely. And I just did a quick check. For many years, about 1% of African American women had their PhDs. Right now, it's 4% of African American women. I'm working on mine right now, and I'm on a 20-year plan. So congratulations again, resilience. Don't give up. That's the goal, and I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you so much. The one thing that inspired me to keep moving forward is now my daughter is actually going for her PhD because she said I inspired her to do so. So it's just been little things along the way that's kept me going. And she's only 27. So
that's fantastic.
Thank you.
That message is what we need to change in our schools, that you're dumb. That teachers don't even realize when they're making people feel like they're dumb. And then when they do that, people own that identity. Ken and I have talked about identity. And when that gets drilled in at the second and third and fourth grade level, that breaking that identity and changing that messaging, changing that internal dialogue is so important. So, yes.
And I tell you, she suffered through test anxiety, where she would get all A's and B's, but then when she took a test, she would fail courses because she would get F's. And so she thought she was dumb. So it was almost like a cycle. And I did the exact same thing with her as my mom did with me, and tried to just show her my life. Tell her, look, if I could do it, you could do it. And now I'm so proud of her. And I thank you also, April. I did hear you say you was proud of me. I thank you so much.
Yeah, this is a super motivating episode. So I hope if anybody just rolls the dice and chooses an episode, they watch this one, because they're definitely going to need the pearls of wisdom. And we were talking about, going for a PhD and learning, and you talked about how you did your dissertation on game-based learning. So the part of the reason this is an interesting field for me, and Ken and I have talked about this at length at some earlier episodes of how kids are getting into the gaming world, but how there's a disconnect between parents and kids as far as gaming. And some people see gaming as a distraction while others see it as productive. And so these higher ups and these executives who are thinking about getting into the gaming space, this may be an area of hesitation. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a father of two. One likes to play video games, but he's just on those games all the time. He's not making time for school. He's not making time for sports, all this, da, 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 da. But we believe here at Warrior Gamer that games can be used as a tool for self-improvement. That is really important. And you talk about game-based learning, which is a field that is very near and dear to me. So could you tell us more about what that dissertation entailed and kind of what are the future ramifications of game-based learning?
Yes, it was titled Exploring Strategies Leadership Need to Integrate Game-Based Learning into Higher Education. So it wasn't for K through 12, it was more for our college students now, the ones that I would just calling digital natives. That's all they know is digital things, technology. And once again, like what I experienced, they're trying to teach them the traditional way. And I don't think that it's anything wrong with doing it that way. However, I think it needs to be supplemented with something else. And that's something else being game-based learning. Because to me, or the research that I found, it basically could motivate the students. It could help them retain the information, basically do the exact same thing it did for me. And I was able to find research, documented research on that, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well. And so that's when I was asked, well, what are you going to do your dissertation on? I kind of sat back, and within probably about 5 minutes, it was like, oh, game-based learning. Because I also experienced it in the military as well. We did game-based learning there. And when I worked for the Department of Defense, we did it there as well. And they do it in corporations now, but most of the time they don't call it game-based learning, but that's what it is. So hopefully I answered your question.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I'd love to have a link to all of this stuff too for curious minds. I'm told that the medical community is filled with the most curious people on the planet, so I'm sure they're going to want some links to everything that you've done. Once again, we are greatly honored. We're humbled. And we're very grateful for your time and your energy and everything that you've done for folks, and that now this is here instilled for perpetuity for the world to see. And we hope that it reaches the people who need it the most, and that your message is carried by them to others so that they pay it forward as well. And for me, that's the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast. Over and out.
Thank you.